quick overview on the geography, then turn it over to the master. You're standing on Bolivar Heights. You need to think of Harpers Ferry in the area here as a triangle of mountains. Three mountains that come together in this triangle. You can see them right here very well. As you look into the gap, you're looking basically east. Now there's obviously more than three mountains, so let me explain what I mean by the triangle. To the left of the gap, and that's the gap that has been carved by the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers. The mountains you see are the Blue Ridge. Blue Ridge to your left, Blue Ridge to your right. In fact, that mountain right there, which is in Maryland, Maryland to your left, that is the last of the Blue Ridge in the United States. That's the northernmost extension of the Blue Ridge. Locally, we refer to it as the Elk Ridge. Blue Ridge, Elk Ridge. So you can see three states from here. You're in West Virginia. Maryland to the left of the gap. Virginia you can also see. As you look through the gap, you will see a mountain in the middle ground. Not the mountains nearest us, but a mountain in the middle ground. To the right of the gap. That's Virginia. That's called Short Hill. Off in the distance, you will see another ridge. That's 15 miles from here, and that is known as the Catoctin Mountain Range. Now, you're all familiar with the Catoctin Mountains because that's where Camp David is located, but not there. Camp David would be well off to your left. If we were to carve a notch through the Catoctin Mountains, you'd see Frederick. You'd see the spires of Frederick, because Frederick is due east of us from this point, right through that mountain. So, here we are on Bolivar Heights, one of the three that form the triangle. North, that direction. Hagerstown, that direction. 25 miles to Hagerstown, where we started. Antietam, that direction. About midway between us and Hagerstown. Maryland Heights to your left, obviously named for the fact that it's in Maryland. The southern part of the Elk Ridge is called Maryland Heights. To the right, on the right side of the gap, this extension of the Blue Ridge, this is called Loudon Heights. And you're standing on Bolivar Heights, named after the great South American liberator, Simon Bolivar. This is West Virginia. They don't know how to roll their R's, so it's Bolivar. I'm from Western Maryland. I don't know how to roll my R's either, so it's Bolivar. So that's your triangle. Maryland Heights, Loudon Heights, Bolivar Heights. Here we are. You can see that if you don't hold these mountaintops, you're in trouble, and that you may be here in the Gulf. He knows this. I will only finish with saying that Robert E. Lee had been here once before. At the time of the John Brown raid, he, of course, was responsible for the capture of Brown in 1859, so Lee was familiar with the geography, the topography of Harpers Ferry. And so was his principal lieutenant, Jackson, who he sends here because this was Jackson's first field command of the American Civil War, here at Harpers Ferry. In fact, the famous Stonewall Brigade, the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 27th, 33rd Virginia Regiments, would be organized by Jackson here on Bolivar Heights and would be trained and disciplined here on Bolivar Heights. And as I like to say to my friend Bud Robertson, the wall of the stone wall that stood at Manassas was created right here in April and May and June of 1861 before they went to Manassas. So Jackson knows the territory, and that's going to be advantage Confederates. Turn it over to my good friend, Colonel Barbs.
All right, we're going to point out that Jackson was familiar with the area, Lee's familiar with the area. It was following the Union occupation of it when General Banks crossed the river here. It had been turned into an important base because the Union had reopened traffic over the Baltimore and Ohio River. And they know that Confederate raiders So they recruited, they would send, they have David Stansbury Miles had a cloud over him because he was accused of being intoxicated during the Battle of First Manassas. They do not give him what they could have done, but they're going to give him a command that they will not figure will be in the first line of serious military action. So he's in command of what is called the Railroad Brigade, and its headquarters are here, and his mission is guarding bridges and various improvements on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad from the area well west of the east of the Monocacy River on toward into considerably into the panhandle of Maryland. So the troops are not of high quality. Now, when he's here and the siege, when he gets into trouble, his command will consist of regiments that have been in the service 3 weeks with no training. So it's in the background of war. Now, as the situation deteriorates and Lee and the Union are driven back into northwest, back into the approaches to Washington, and as a result of the Battle of Second Manassas, the Union are only holding the very lower part of the Shenandoah Valley. At the time that Lee reaches Rainsville on the third day of September, and as far as he knows, they're holding Winchester, Martinsburg, and Harpers Ferry in the lower valley. One of the commander down there is Julius White. Julius White knows Lincoln well. He's a lawyer, right? Like your lawyers from Illinois, and he will be on Winchester. Now Lee is going to make the decision where he's going to cross the river on the 4th day of September at the Harrison House in Leesburg. At that time, he receives word that Winchester has been evacuated. So that's one thing that's going into his new Winchester has been evacuated, and the Union troops will there under White will pull back to Martinsburg, and the Union will finally, Halleck will finally decide that Harper's Ferry must be held. So when White evacuates Harper's Ferry on the evening of 11th and 12th, he arrives here, and since Miles is a West Pointer, White is a lawyer. Miles has been here for some time. He decides to waive his senior rank of colonel to Dixon Miles. Now, the Union troops were somewhat like the British in World War II. I like to use World War II, my war, as simile. The only defenses on Maryland Heights at this time are the naval battery. If you look at Maryland Heights from where I'm standing right here, you can see the highest point of it, and you can see a ridge sloping down toward the river there, defenses up on Maryland Heights in case the enemy comes from that way. Miles himself would have gotten out of here long before Lee arrived, before Lee opened his eyes on it, but he's ordered to stay here by the General-in-Chief, General Halleck. Now, Wells will make a later statement on Halleck, but since I don't like Halleck, I like to quote it, but he makes it about a year after that. He says that Halleck has three things. He's no good, Halleck is no good, initiates nothing, does nothing, and accomplishes nothing. And Lincoln later will call him a glorified Turk. So the decision is made to hold here. We're going to abandon Martinsburg. So that's going to give you available about 14,000 men to defend Harpers and Ferry, of which about better than one half of them are troops that would you not classify as trained. The only defenses they have until the last moment are those three naval guns up there on the shoulder of Maryland Heights. So, in view of this, the situation is now putting in the eye of the hurricane, which will be, of course, the convergence when Lee decides Special Order 191 to eliminate the Union forces. Lee himself believes the Confederates the Union will not defend this. And he figures when they come up there with their timetable, they plan to converge the three columns on here, and that Harper's Ferry will fall into Union hands, into Confederate hands on the 12th. As we're going to see, Lee, because of his detour, will not enter Martinsburg until the morning of the 12th. So the Union are now having them close in on them, and they're going to divide their command. We're going to organize them into provisional brigades, and we're going to have a man who is a Democrat, a war Democrat from Ohio. Colonel Ford will be in command of the Union force that is assigned to defend Maryland Heights. Now, Maryland Heights, the cannon's pulled the wrong way, and he's going to establish a position about 1.5 miles north of the point of the mountain there, and there he will throw up temporary earthworks with an abattis in front. Then he will then they'll establish a strong point on Camp Hill. Camp Hill is apparent here in the middle foreground. Look over these trees here, and then you can see the large brick building there, and those other buildings on the intermediate hill between us and Maryland Heights. That will be where Colonel Ward will be. And that's where you'll place your largest guns in the field artillery. And your rifle guns go up there. Now, he's also going to hold Bolivar Heights. And most of his men are going to be on Bolivar Heights. If you turn to map number 6, you can see their deployment. Now, holding the Union right on Bolivar Heights, from the area, maybe about 300 yards from where we're standing, is Colonel Detossi. Now, there are many frauds in the Civil War, and Detossi is one of the super frauds, a European that comes over here with exaggerated credentials. We should have known that well because we get enough of them in the Revolutionary War, of these frauds coming from abroad. Occasionally you get a gem like Steuben, but they're few and far between. They're usually out and out frauds. And of course he commands the most interesting regiment in the army. They march like Borsarieri, They fight like the Bersaglieri did in World War II. They're elitists in the Italian army, and they were not very good in World War II. And then now they would have to give the commands in Esperanto in them, because you got companies of Hungarians, you got companies of Austrians, you got companies of Germans, and as you know, in Germany, the people from Austria talking to somebody from up in the Rhineland, they don't understand. It's a lot different than Brooklynese. And Clem, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So that's his original regiment. So he's going to command the right and Trimble the left. And here they're going to be waiting for the approach of the Confederates. Now, when the Confederates do, they're going to give Walker, John G. Walker, will, by the 13th, is going to have 4 guns up on Loud Heights. There is no defense on Loud Heights. Now, Jackson knows Loudon Heights well, because when he is here after the Battle of Winchester, he's going to have a regiment up there on Loudon Heights. So he damn sure is going to know about Loudon Heights. And our friend Dixon Miles doesn't. So at the same time, after a serious engagement, Dennis, he likes to do what Dixon Stanbury Miles says after he finds out when he sees Ford's men on the morning of the 13th evacuating the position up there where they've engaged with Kershaw and Barksdale's brigade as they advance southward from Solomon's Gap, which is not defended, to attack the position about a mile up the ridge there. And all the Confederates are waiting for Jackson, who is going to arrive by way of Martinsburg. And when Jackson arrives from Martinsburg, he's going to deploy himself on Schoolhouse Ridge, which is which you can see on your map here, is parallel to us. Now Jackson, either apocryphal or not, says he would rather attack Harper's Ferry 40 times than defend it once. So you're going to see that we looked at how they're using the terrain. Maryland Heights will be in rebel hands. Loudon Heights will be in rebel hands. And when we go and look the other way, we'll see that Bolivar Heights is going, that Schoolhouse Ridge is going to be in rebel hands. And unless McClellan can relieve them, the foregone conclusion is going to be we're going to surrender. We're going to have to surrender, which we'll find out they're going to do on the morning of the 15th.
Ed, were most of these hills denuded at that time?
What?
Were most of the hills denuded at that time?
Yes, because they had been cutting up until the 1840s. Very valuable what Dennison, his former wife, did on us through these 2 studies here of Maryland and Loudon Heights. They've been cutting to convert charcoal heavily off Maryland Heights. So Maryland Heights would be largely denuded of trees and underbrush. They started the furnaces again as a war major, but there would not be many trees on them. There would be less trees on there, but there would be more woods on Maryland. But the thing to notice on Loudon Heights, if you look from here, you can see the cleft where the river comes. Then you can see the line of trees, and then you can see a plateau. You can see a plateau about 1/3 of the way up the crest of Loudon Heights. And that's going to be very, very important as Dennis and I developed the story on the morning of the 15th because of the actions Jackson takes on the night of the 14th when he's going to send Colonel Crutchfield with 10 guns and place them on that plateau because the 4 guns, rifle guns of Walker are going to be clear on the skyline there. And you're going to have a much better range on to pound the Union here, and they're going to pound them in the flank here when he puts the front field there, and that's what will be really significant, and that's why it's important when Dennis led one of the fights as part of the Murphy Farm. Now, where's the Murphy Farm? And then I'll shut up and take questions because we got to go looking the other way. You see that large field. Look across the road. See that large field. That's the side of the Murphy Farm. Very important. When they wake up in the morning on the 15th, they're going to find students of Guild occupied in that field there. So the Union is going to have very few options on the morning. Any other questions before Dennis can do his, since we're looking here, he likes Stevenson's Sanders' statement when he sees a board drawing. Any questions before Dennis takes over and we walk over to get a view looking the other way? Talk about your favorite man. Favorite statement.
Okay, so the situation, as Ed's line, is not good for Dixon Miles. The Confederates have arrived. You know, the amazing thing about Special Orders 191 is not that it's lost and found by McClellan, but that it's working. This is the most complex order imaginable. It's the most complex order that Jackson had received from Lee in terms of execution. Think about this for a moment. 3 columns of men, totaling about 28 to 30,000 Confederates, coming from 3 different directions. They're not able to see each other. They're not able to communicate each other. But they must coordinate. They must coordinate with each other. Because if they don't come here and seal the triangle at the same time, if any edge of that triangle is left open, the Yankees are able to get away. So the whole idea is that trap them in the hole so they can't get out. But that means that the rebels have to take Maryland Heights, Mountain Heights, and this position basically all at the same time. Well, 2 of the 3 legs have been taken, as Ed pointed out. Mountain Heights fell without a fight, rebel flag flying up there. Maryland Heights, there is a fight. The heaviest number of casualties that will occur here will be on Maryland Heights. They're going to fight up there all day long on September the 13th. These are McClaw's men, Kershaw, Barksdale, Mississippi, South Carolina boys, up against New Yorkers principally. But the quote that Ed wants me to share with you, because he's heard me do this and seen me do this over the years. Colonel Miles was up here on Bolivar Heights. And Colonel Miles knows that if he loses Maryland Heights, he's in big trouble. Because Maryland Heights is the tallest of the 3 mountains surrounding Harpers Ferry. Doesn't look that way, but that's an optical illusion. Maryland Heights is much taller than Loudon Heights, and obviously taller than this one. So you've got to hold that mountain. You can't lose it. Well, by 3:30 on the afternoon of the 13th, which was a Saturday, September the 13th, you've been fighting up there since 6:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, there's no more smoke rising from the mountain. Not a good sign. But even a worse sign is McClaw's has pressed to the point where the Federals think they need to come down. They need to retreat. They need to withdraw. And as they're withdrawing, there's this long blue snake that you would be able to see coming down off of Maryland Heights. Thousands of Union soldiers marching from the crest of the mountain down by the naval battery on our edge, our side, down that flank of the mountain towards us. And Colonel Miles, who is here on top of the mountain, looking that direction because Jackson himself is that way, suddenly has his aide wheel him around towards Maryland Heights, and Miles sees for the first time the Yankees are coming down. And so, according to an eyewitness, a chaplain, no less, of the 115th New York, who was within 30 feet of the Colonel Miles, when Miles turned and saw this, this is what happened. This is what Colonel Miles said. Now think for a moment about the panic, the sudden seizure of panic when you know you just lost the high ground, and here your troops are coming down. So this is what Miles does. God almighty! They are coming down! Hell and damnation! They are coming down! That's an exact quote. According to the chaplain. As to what Colonel Miles' reaction was. Very bad situation. But before we go take a look at Schoolhouse Ridge, one thing. Yes, rebels hold Maryland Heights now. Confederates hold Loudon Heights. But Miles still is here on Bolivar Heights with the bulk of his force. And as Ed was pointing out, if you look off in that direction and see what at the time of the war was known as the Chambers Farm and then became the Murphy Farm, so the Chambers Murphy Farm, that open field out there, you can see the flank of Bolivar Heights. The Chambers Murphy Farm is this mountain, but it's the lowest point of Bolivar Heights. And it's flanked by the Shenandoah River, and although you can't see the water, you can see the canyon carved by the river. Look at it. Look at that shadow on the side of the mountain. That's the Shenandoah River right there. And so that's where Bolivar Heights ends, on that end. Then over here is the Potomac River on its flank. So basically this ridge is 1 3/4 mile long, 1 3/4 mile, and Dixon Miles has to hold all of it from Potomac flank to Shenandoah flank, and he doesn't have enough men to do it. That is going to be a serious problem. We need to move on, but before we do, I wanted to have Ed and I show you Jackson's position, because although Jackson's men, McLaws, has taken Maryland Heights as assigned in 191, and John Walker's taken Loudon Heights, his assignment 191, Jackson hasn't taken Bolivar Heights, his assignment in 191. He hasn't succeeded yet. So he is parallel to us on another ridge known as Schoolhouse Ridge, and we wanted to show you Jackson's position from the Union perspective. So let's just walk to the other side of the hill. Bolivar Heights. You went from the eastern slope of Bolivar Heights to the western slope of Bolivar Heights. All right, you went off the top of the crest. We were east a moment ago. Now you're looking basically west. There is the Shenandoah Valley in front of you. The mountain you see in the distance, that's 40 miles from here. It's known as North Mountain. It's the western edge, the far western edge of the Shenandoah Valley. You, of course, right now are on the northern part of the valley, specifically the northeastern section of the valley. In front of you, you can see an open field area which is known as Schoolhouse Ridge. It's not an obvious ridge from this point because you're so much higher. But as Ed pointed out, during the battle, there are no trees up here. This isn't a cut. There are no trees up here. They've all been cut. So the Federals have an excellent field of view and field of fire from Bolivar Heights. And got a battery of rifled guns back here. There were 6 batteries of rifled guns up here that just formed some of the firepower that Colonel Miles had. And by the 14th, Sunday, September the 14th, virtually all the Union infantry is now concentrated on this mountain. So this is the point I want to illustrate. When you read about the battle at Harpers Ferry, most will tell you that once Jackson arrives, it's over. That once he has taken Maryland Heights, Loudon Heights, and even though he hasn't taken this position, he's on Bolivar Heights, or he's out on Schoolhouse Ridge, Jackson is, it's over. The Federals are surrounded, only a matter of time. All that Miles has to do is put up the white flag. Well, Miles doesn't put up the white flag. He's been in the Army for 42 years. He is a West Point graduate. He was breveted 3 times during the Mexican War. He outranked Robert E. Lee in the regular Army. He's not going to quit. And I'll show you why he's not going to quit. The evidence is right here in front of you. Make sure, just take a few short steps down with me. Be careful, but you've got to see this from the best point to see it. Come on down here with me. we have to do is just come right down here. Just gather around right here. You can see it. If you don't come down here, you can't see it. So come on down. You got to witness this. Now remember, no trees. This is a naked mountain. Jackson is out there in that field, 1 mile from here. In fact, you can see artillery in the field. That's 1 mile from here. Confederate artillery. Schoolhouse Ridge. You're on Bolivar Heights. So although Jackson has Harpers Ferry surrounded, if you are an infantryman with Stonewall Jackson 1 mile from here, and you're an infantryman with Colonel Miles here on this basically cliff, who's got advantage on the infantry? Who has advantage on the artillery? And the answer is not Jackson. Stonewall had never had to face a Union position of defense like this. Nowhere. Nowhere had Jackson faced an experience of possibly attacking a position like this held by the Union Army. Ladies and gentlemen, this position, Bolivar Heights, elevation-wise, is taller than Little Round Top. Oh my God. It is taller than Big Round Top in terms of vertical elevation from the floor of a valley. This is the position that Dixon Miles holds, defends with artillery. Unlike at Gettysburg, where they don't hold it with artillery or infantry, here he has 14,000 men on top of this hill. And Jackson would have to cross over 1 mile of open ground under fire to the base of the hill, no trees, full view, and then climb this hill. And it's deceiving because we kept the trees in the bottom of the hill. It gets even steeper. You're not seeing the whole elevation difference. You're not seeing it because the trees at the bottom we didn't cut out, but it's even steeper. Look at how deep that valley is in front of you. And so what I'm suggesting is Jackson's got a problem, a serious problem. Although 191's been executed and the Confederates have arrived and surrounded, Miles didn't quit. And as Ed pointed out, they didn't expect him to hold nor to defend. So this is a serious predicament for Jackson. The Confederates are already behind schedule. We already expected them to all be reunited in Maryland. We expect to be on the way to Pennsylvania by now. Jackson's behind schedule, and he faces a dominant position of defense by the enemy who doesn't seem likely to quit. Miles is resolute. And so what we're going to do is take you to where most of you have never been, because we're going to take you to Schoolhouse Ridge. Everything you see out there in that open field is all new to the national park. The last time this trip happened, it wasn't part of the national park. And so that's where we're going, right out there. Now I thought about walking all of you, but after seeing the group last night, I canceled that plan. So we're going to drive to Schoolhouse Ridge that you can only do with a ranger. So let's go look. He's stealth today, my goodness. I always like to take Ed someplace he's never been before.
Most I've been to there is that school.
So this is a place, see, you all are witnessing history today. You think of all the battlefields he's tramped on over the years, over the last 60, 70 years. He's never been right here. He has been, as you look out here in the distance, so those of you that have been with me in the past, the only place we could go on Schoolhouse Ridge was right up there. You actually see a schoolhouse. Good Lord. When was this?
91.
1991. How about that? Very impressive. There we are. We're standing at the schoolhouse. This came out of the archives, the Civil War Roundtable archives.
Joe's archive.
Way to go, Joe. Good job. That's where we were, right there. If you were here in 91, we were standing there by the school. Very nice to have a school on Schoolhouse Ridge, but that's not why this is called Schoolhouse Ridge.
I'll point to where we were in
2002. Where were we?
over there.
We're over there.
In that
Oh, we were over there at the bottom of Bolivar Heights.
Yeah.
Yes, Bolivar Heights, lower Bolivar Heights. Yes,
You just
yes.
acquired it at that time.
We had, right? That's right. Yeah. So again, this is about 300. This is about 300 acres. That thank you. I want to read that out.
Yeah, well, take it.
Hang on to it. Give it to me a little bit. Thank you. About 300 acres that was acquired through our friends with the Civil War Trust. Some of you, maybe many of you, were contributors to this campaign to buy this land. This land was owned by a developer, but he had passed away, so it was in his estate. And so the negotiation on this property was not that difficult. It took a while, but it wasn't that difficult.
Was
And
this
there,
the developer that put in the...
Dixie Killam, the owner of the Hilltop House, was the owner of this property.
It wasn't the one that put in the...
No,
the pipe.
and not the one who did the illegal piping and trenching. No, no. So this was a fairly elongated negotiation, but one that had a positive outcome, and here you are part of that today. As I mentioned on my bus, the Civil War Trust put up a very large plaque for those who had contributed more than $1,000 per person to the acquisition of this property. And there is amongst you at least one of you named on that plaque, and that is Mary Abro. And so, Mary, thank you for your contribution.
That's why she's here on Thursday. Usually this is Thursday.
Yeah.
Right,
So thank you, Mary.
I don't know.
It's really
How did you get
appreciated.
your schedule changed?
I realized you can ask for a Monday, Wednesday schedule instead of a Tuesday, Thursday.
This is good.
Also, a little bit more Civil War Trust history. As you look this direction, and you're looking at Bolivar Heights. Now, let me give you a little geographic orientation. There's Bolivar Heights immediately in front of you. You can see how much higher it is than we are. The crest of Schoolhouse Ridge is behind you. Turn around, you can see the crest of the hill. Even if we went up there, we'd be well below Bolivar Heights in terms of elevation. This is the Confederate position of Jackson, the Union position of Miles in front of you. In the distance, the reason I wanted to bring you to this point, you can actually see the tip of Maryland Heights. If you look up over Bolivar Heights, there's a ridge top to the distance behind it. You can see it starts to curl down and disappear into the sky. That's the end of Maryland Heights. So the Confederates are up there, and as you look off in the distance, the mountain you see running to your left, that's Elk Ridge, Blue Ridge, Maryland Heights. So that was McClaw's target, and he has succeeded in taking it. Loudon Heights over here to your right. Notice in the middle it's all blue sky. That's because that's the gap. That's the gap we saw from the top of Bolivar Heights, looking east. We're now on the west side of Bolivar Heights. The gap is blocked. We can't see it. The mountain blocks our view of that. But we can still see where the gap exists, where all the sky is, and then to your right, the mountain, Loudon Heights. Once again held by the Confederates. Walker, Jackson is here. Turn it over to Ed, but before I do, I want to make an important point. Special Orders 191 is not a sideshow. It is the show. 2/3 of the Confederate Army is here with Jackson. 2 out of 3 rebels are here. Lee has the other third with himself at Hagerstown and some of them at South Mountain near Boonesboro. Lee at this time, incidentally, is looking that direction, north. He is 5 miles from Pennsylvania. Lee is, with Longstreet and with John Bell Hood. Lee's not worried about what's happening back here 25 miles away because it's under Jackson. He doesn't know Jackson's problem. And you can see the problem right in front of you. What is Jackson going to do to force these people to quit? And as you can see, any type of infantry assault from here to there, remembering now it's denuded, they can see you with artillery on the high ground, an elevation higher than Big Round Top. Jackson's got a serious problem. We'll let Ed solve the problem for you.
All right, Jackson doesn't know how serious his problems really are. And Lee's are getting worse at this time. It's on the Because it's on the 14th. It's on the eve before Jackson arrives here. Late on the 13th and on the 14th. On the 14th are the battles of South Mountain, which are not going well for Robert E. Lee. When Jackson arrives here, he takes position with J.R. Jones. Now, for some reason, Jackson likes J.R. Jones. J.R. Jones will go to the rear very early in the Battle of Antietam, we're going to find out, with not a very serious disability. He will also go to the rear at the Battle of Chancellorsville, also feigning a serious disability.
150 years ago today.
He's a coward, in other words. He's a Jackson protege, though. He likes him. So J.R. Jones will follow the army north with no command. He's been removed, and he'll get the Union will capture him during the retreat. After the war, he'll become a persona non grata socially in Harrisonburg and where he lives, because he lives openly with a black woman. That's something you don't do in polite society. So he is, you don't want me to go and identify you as J.R. Jones here. Well, his division is going to be on the left. In this area here where we are, as Jackson's men take position, are going to be Lawton's division, and as you look on your map, on the far right is going to be in the area where we came down, when we came down off of Bolivar Heights, drove by the Allstat House, which is soon going to hopefully be acquired. That would be in the area where where A.P. Hill will be. Now, when the bombardment starts, it's going to be late on the afternoon of the 14th, and they're going to be firing from these 3 points, but they're really not outside of the Union burning up most of their guns for their large rifle guns. That is really not going to solve the problem. Jackson has a big problem, and it's getting worse for General Lee up on South Mountain. Why is it getting worse? Because about on the evening of the 14th, from Turner's Gap, Lee will send a message to McLaws. And now they figure McLaws is going to convey it to Jackson. It is that the day is gone against us, and we must go back to Virginia. So that means that as we go into the night of the 14th, as the Union cavalry will escape, will be crossing the river on the Bottom Bridge, turning right, then turning left, and passing through Sharpsburg about midnight, where they run into some of Lee's men who have already pulled back from South Mountain, and then they head on. But Jackson has to do something to break this stalemate. The only hope to terminate what is now, now Jackson is the prima donna, and Lee is the chorus right now on the evening of the 14th. But what is Jackson going to do? He's got to bring this operation to a close early on the morning of the 15th. And how's he going to do it? He's going to move around the left flank. Now, the Union defense line on Bolivar Heights does not extend more than several hundred yards to the south and east of the road where we crossed by that motel. They've left, except we're covered by a very light picket line entering the Union left, where there is a big gap. Undoubtedly, Miles, Jackson having been familiar with the area, probably more than Miles. Miles has been here longer, but they don't realize there's an opportunity to pass men between the southeastern slope of Bolivar Heights and the Shenandoah River. As you're going to see when we get to the Chambers Farm, that's going to be a regular gorge. The east would be equivalent of almost equivalent, and I'm using a little hyperbole, of Grand Canyon. And there's enough room to slip General A.P. Hill, if the Yankees are not very alert, between where Bolivar Heights terminates in that low ground at the Chambers Farm and the Shenandoah River. There's also a ford in that area where you can send Crutchfield and 10 guns across the Shenandoah River and put them on that plateau. So what had been 4 guns on Loudon Heights will now become 14 guns. And the 10 guns that Crutchfield's going to put up there are going to be very close to the enemy's, firing into the enemy's left and rear. A perfect place for Crutchfield to be. And it's still a better place for when Jackson attacks on the morning of the 14th, so on the morning of the 15th. So that means that Jackson is going to use this land and the land, additional land getting around the Olstad house, and the land they acquired a number of years, 8 or 9 years ago, the Chambersburg farm, to unlock the key and avoid having to attack a frontal attack from this area here against the Union main force. So we can just think of that night that Lee spends as he moves his men as they withdraw from the engagement of South Mountain. He's already committed himself. The day has gone against us when he mentions McLaws, and we must go back to Virginia. Long toward, when he gets to near Keedysville, he's going to halt, because he's also going to get a message from Jackson that Jackson believes that the Federals may surrender in the morning. Jackson is betting on what he's done that's going to unlock the key and cause the Federals to surrender in the morning. So as we know, we're going to be very, very foggy on the morning of the 14th. Lee is, on the morning of the 15th, Lee is going to be up early. He is now sending to his advanced people, when you cross the Antietam halt, and as he's still waiting and waiting. Now it's very, very foggy that morning of the 15th. He'll hear the guns open fire around 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Then the guns will go silent. That's going to become what Jackson has accomplished, because the fire of Crutchfield's guns reinforcing the fire of the other guns, but more important, the advance of Hill's men up out of that gorge, gashed in the landscape by the Shenandoah, is going to put him in possession of much of the Chambers farm and in the flank and rear of the Union left, and then it's a foregone conclusion that the Union are going to have to surrender. And that's what's going to happen. So if that had not happened, Jackson had not, and again you can pretty well see where they're going to go. You can see them sloping away there as it declines Bolivar Heights. You can see the cars coming on the highway. You can see the motel, and that's considerably higher than the Chambers Farm. Right on from there, about less than a fourth of a mile, you're going to come into this gorge that the Shenandoahs gashed here, and Dudley Jackson had used this earlier. He had used it when after the Battle of First Winchester, when he puts the 2nd Virginia out onto that land. The 2nd Virginia and Dudley had crossed that same ford that Crutchfield is going to take his guns to put them onto that plateau where the 2nd Virginia is on the 30th day of May of 1862, which is about 4 months before we're going to use it to give the Union more pain and suffering. Any questions before I turn it back over to Dennis? I think this is a wonderful acquisition, particularly because of 9/11. It's very difficult to go back to 1991 and go up to the school now. They particularly don't like you on the grounds up there.
Right, can't get up there.
This is a far better view than you were here in 2002. You were here when we were on the other new acquisition at that time.
Bolivar Heights.
Any questions? Now let you turn it over to Dennis for his remarks.
Bolivar Heights, just so you can see the extent of what Ed was speaking about, just so we're clear. Obviously, you can see the treed area, that elevation, all Bolivar Heights. We can't quite see the Potomac cut, where it cuts off just to the left. If we walk even further up to the position where the battery is, the Confederate battery, you can see actually a gap in the mountains where the Potomac cuts off Bolivar Heights, forming the left flank. It's right behind those trees that are here immediately in front of us. That is the left flank of Bolivar Heights. The right flank, however, goes way down there. You see that open green field off in the distance. That's Bolivar Heights. So it doesn't end where you see the motel hotel. What Ed was pointing out is that's where the Union line ended, basically right there. But the ridge line itself continued nearly another 3/4 of a mile beyond to the right of where you see the hotel, all the way out to where you see that open grassy area, and then just beyond it. You can actually see the end of Bolivar Heights. I'm going to try to point it out to you, where the Shenandoah River forms its flank. If you look to the grassy field on Bolivar Heights, come to your right, you will see a power line pole. You see it? Then come further to the right, you will see another power line pole. You see it? Just to the left of the second power line pole, you'll see what looks like a drop. If you look carefully, you can actually discern what appears to be a drop in the mountain. That's where Bolivar Heights ends, right there. That's how far away it is. Now that's the line that Dixon Miles had to command and hold against Jackson. Now you can see where Jackson would find the vulnerability. I'm going to ask Ed a question. I know he'll know the answer. How long was the Union line at Gettysburg on July the 3rd from Cemetery Hill to the wheat field?
From Cemetery Hill, if you're taking with the Cemetery Hills to the wheat field, that's a short mile. My point is, Dixon Miles has almost double the length to cover on Bolivar Heights than George Meade had at Gettysburg. With Jordan.
And in that mile, Ed, from the Cemetery Hill to the wheat field, the approximate number of Federals holding that position, just approximate.
On what day?
The 2nd, let's say, July 2nd.
On the 2nd, you have holding let's go to the 2nd, because we've got to factor in 2nd.
All right, total number of men. Just give me a rough estimate.
On the 3rd, on the 2nd, you have Hancock's Corps, which is about 10,000, about 12,000 men
32,000 holding a mile. Dixon Miles has 14,000 holding a mile and 3/4. You can see the problem for him, and you can see the opportunity for Jackson. So
he can observe what the Union line.
well, he doesn't know for sure what they do or don't. He's assuming that their vulnerable point is down there in that area where you see the grassy field on Bolivar Heights.
And he assumes right.
He assumed correctly. That's correct. So one other thing Jackson does, just to make sure the Yankees don't defend that position. On the night of the 14th, in addition to the flanking maneuver that Ed explained by Hill, in other words, what AP Hill's going to do, hold on here for a second. You all stand right where you are. Just bear with me for a moment. All right, now turn and face me for a moment. You're Dixon Miles on Bolivar Heights. I'm Jackson. What Jackson's ordering Hill to do is go around you. Go around your left. Down to the Shenandoah River on your left. And then go around you on Bolivar Heights and climb Bolivar Heights so that AP Hill comes in on your ridge behind you. That's what's been ordered. But to make sure that Miles does not defend that position, Jackson on the night of the 14th orders a frontal assault, a nighttime frontal assault against that position. So J.R. Jones's division, the Stonewall division, right where you're standing, they receive orders about 8 o'clock on the night of the 14th to attack. Nighttime attack. So you would pull out. You'd start out. You can't see anything. But here you go. Nobody does a nighttime assault except Jackson. Here we go. Ask Jackson about nighttime assaults tonight. 150 years ago, tonight is when Jackson gets shot. Tonight. As he's exploring, continuing the assault. So here we go. On the night of the 14th, J.R. Jones moving out right toward Bolivar Heights. It works. Miles thinks he's under assault. Jackson knows this is a feint attack. It's not real, but he's got artillery pounding him. He's got his infantry going forward and firing. Miles thinks he's under attack. So he's actually going to pull troops from down on that end of the line up here because he thinks he's under assault by Jackson. Brilliant. Tactical brilliance by Stonewall Jackson. And of course, this goes on for about 3 hours. They get almost to the base of Bolivar Heights. They stop. They had no intention of going up there. And in the meantime, AP Hill is sneaking around the flank. Successful. Brilliance by Jackson. Now, we need to, Ed and I can answer questions on the bus because we need to move on to our next stop. We're going to take you down to where Hill will finalize the flanking maneuver, the Chambers-Murphy Farm. Again, a new acquisition for the National Park, and so we stay on time. We need to move on back to the buses to get you over there. So let's head on back, and then we can answer questions.
Across on this side of the river. Now, the one was going to have to cross the river on Buckfield and Tennessee. When they're going to cross, about half a mile up the stream, where they can get down to the low ground there where we see that building, send them across, take them up onto that plateau, the first plateau on Loud Hut. Now what they're going to have to do is we're going to have to get on this land. We're going to have to on that side and keep the monkey along the side of the river, between the river and the bluff here, and get to a place where they can get up onto the property here, which is further down to our right, or to your left, if you basically get them up to the property. And night. It's going to be very foggy in the morning. It's going to be, when the fog starts lifting, find a better section of this double ground just drawn across and behind the left flank of the Union. You see what they're doing. They're coming down here. Here's what we're in this area here, and where it shows green. Looking along the bank.
Map number 6, if you all have it. You don't have it on it. Map number 6.
Looking along the bank here, and to our left of us, they're going to come up across this land here, where we are, and move in here on their flank and rear. So that's so. As soon as that happens, guns open fire. Plus the guns on both up here. Now remember those 4 guns. These guns are delivering fire right into the flank and rear. These, of course, are going to be shelling the people at Fort Hill. One's on the 4 guns on Maryland Heights, and the concentration of guns along there. The Federals, of course, will come to a decision very rapidly that they are going to negotiate the land. And of course, that's the prima donna has now given Lee, the chorus, the ability to make the decision that he's going to fight a battle at Antietam. Because he's already then come back. It's been a night of vacillation, because when he reaches the area of Keedysville, he leaves this message that they're probably going to surrender in the morning. Jackson thinks now he's got to wait for what to take place.
This ground that you're on, as you can see, the difficulty of taking this position based upon the very existence of this incredible precipice. Even though this is the low point on Bolivar Heights, remember now we were that way about a mile when we started. We've come this direction, and now here we are on the edge, and you can see that the verticalness here is almost 300 feet vertical down to the Shenandoah River. So the very idea that A.P. Hill might even succeed with this mission has to be called into question. Not only does Hill move nearly 6,000 men into position, or attempt to, but as Ed pointed out, he's got to bring 20 pieces of artillery along with him. Jackson orders him to bring 20 guns onto this field. Now, how in the world are you going to get them up here? Then you might say, well, it's Jackson. Of course he'll get them up here. Well, you're right. And it's Hill. Of course he'll get them up here. But what you really can't see from here is they don't bring the guns up over the cliffs. What you can't see very well there are several deep chasms or ravines that cut into Bolivar Heights here. And this again is sometime, if we did an all-day tour at Harpers Ferry, Ed and I would actually take you into one of the ravines that they use. We've got a nice walking trail that brings you up from the river, all the way down the river, up through that ravine. And that's one of the ways they got the guns up here. So you didn't have them up here tugging with ropes up over these cliffs. But even the ravines are so steep that they had to use ropes to try to get the guns up. And the infantry would do the same. The infantry wasn't clawing its way up these vertical precipices, but we're actually going up the ravines, all in the darkness. And so, remember now, Miles is under attack while this is happening. At least he thinks he is. Almost a mile from here. So there was a force here, actually. The force that was here, this is where God fell into the good fortune of the Confederates. There was a force here holding this farm. 1,400 United States cavalrymen were here. Right here. This is where Miles placed them. Until Miles concurred that they should try to break out of Harpers Ferry and go find somebody in the Union Army who could come help them. So all 1,400 men and their horses will be withdrawn from this farm where they could have given the alarm, given the alert, but they had still been here that night. They're all withdrawn, and of course that forms the escape column, the cavalry escape column that leaves on the night of the 14-15. Interesting enough, at about the same time A.P. Hill begins his maneuver at Schoolhouse Ridge, we can't see Schoolhouse Ridge because it's on the other side of Bolivar Heights. But at the same time he begins that maneuver out there in the distance, about a mile from here, the cavalry starts to pull out and go into Harpers Ferry to go across the pontoon bridge and into Maryland. So it's a simultaneous movement. The Confederates are coming, the Federals are leaving. And it opens this area up for A.P. Hill without opposition. Really miraculous. Now to finish, Ed made the point that the Battle of Antietam, now let me stress this, I'm going to repeat what he said, but this deserves repetition. Ed basically says the Battle of Antietam would not have occurred had Jackson not succeeded here. That is not hyperbole. That's a fact. There's an umbilical cord that ties Harpers Ferry and Antietam together. Without Jackson's victory here, there would be no battle at Antietam. So it's very consequential. The other thing that's consequential is that this was the largest surrender of United States troops during the war. About 12,700 U.S. soldiers surrender here. And Jackson also seizes 73 pieces of artillery. That's about 1/5 the total artillery that's in Lee's army at the time. He seizes 200 wagons. That'll transport supplies for the entire Confederate Corps at that time. 1,200 mules, the means of transport, all branded U.S. and fat mules, not like Confederate mules. Good fat mules. And of course the rations, the food, and the clothing, and the shoes, all here. In addition, almost 13,000 small arms became the property of the Confederate States Ordnance Department. And so, who got all this stuff out of here? Well, it wasn't Jackson. It wasn't Jackson's men. But one of the principals left behind to get this captured booty out of here was a fellow you'll recognize. His name was Edward Porter Alexander. Well, the ordnance man. Here, he was an ordnance man in the Confederate Army in September 1862. Remember that he was here in September 62. I'll tell you a little story about where he wasn't in September 1862, but you would think he was. So, big day for Jackson. What looked like wasn't going to happen, happened. Special Orders 191 succeeds. And now Jackson will receive orders from Lee to hurry to Sharpsburg to join him there. We're going to pick that up a bit. Next stop, Lower Town. The town. Now, Ed and I are going to take you down there. Once again, short advertisement. As I mentioned last night, please go to our bookstore. Even if you buy something that's $1. Long time. But what a great place for a farm. And this is one of the most remarkable views in the East, and it's now public property. You can come here, not the way we did, but you can come here and walk here and enjoy this on your own, as we have walking trails all over this farm. The river that you see is the Shenandoah, flowing toward us. The rapids that you see here in front of you are known as Bull Falls. We have little big Bull Falls and little Bull Falls. 2 miles that direction, which is the river flow that way, is the confluence of the Potomac at Shenandoah. So the Shenandoah ends 2 miles from here. If you do a quick turnaround in place, you can actually see the gap. You can see the gap in the distance. Maryland Heights there in the distance to the left. So, love to bring people here because not only do we have this stupendous view, oh my goodness, even more stupendous. What I was looking for, I could see. I can see, Ed, I can see Three Top Mountain overlooking the Cedar Creek Valley. in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. That's 52 miles from here. Now, if you look carefully, you can see it. It's just the very top of the hill. It's distinctive in that it sits right on the horizon. You can see a power line in the distance.
Yep.
And just to the right of the stanchion, the last stanchion on the right that you can see, there's a knoll. Right? You look carefully, it's a very, very light blue knoll. That's Three Top Mountain on Massanutten, overlooking Cedar Creek Battlefield in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. Can you see it, Ed? Really have to, your eye can just barely see it. If you can see the stanchions of the power line, the Dominion power line, and you see a one to the right, stands out by itself to the right. Just to the right of that stanchion, you can see a curled blue knoll. That's Three Top. Three Top Mountain, Massanutten. 52 miles.
So Dennis, who owns the down here?
Well, that's the bad news.
That's good.
The good news is you're on public property. The bad news is that that's Bolivar Heights out there in front of you also. This is Bolivar Heights. That is Bolivar Heights. And that nose of Bolivar Heights is owned by developers today. The same developers in 2007 who carved the water and sewer line, actually that was 2006, who carved the water and sewer line illegally through our national park on Schoolhouse Ridge, basically for the purpose of opening that section of Bolivar Heights up for development. In 2007, the developers who put the water and sewer line in came and proposed this. They proposed to build on that part of Bolivar Heights, 400 acres, 2.3 million square feet of commercial development. Now I can't comprehend that. I don't know what that looks like. So I called Walmart and I said, hey, how big is a super Walmart? How many square feet in a super Walmart? Because I figured I could relate to that perhaps. I was astonished. A super Walmart is 160,000 square feet. 2.3 million square feet on the heart of the battlefield. Now I'm going to stand here and tell you there is no more endangered battlefield property in the United States today than right there. And my friends at the Civil War Trust know that I say that all the time. And I'm still waiting to have somebody rise up and help us take care of this problem. And it's a problem for us because all 400 acres are outside the national park, which means I can't negotiate by law on an inch of that property. The park surrounds it, but it's like a donut hole. And so the only way that property is going to be saved is through the Civil War Trust. Now I'm okay with fighting Walmart at the Wilderness, which wasn't on the battlefield incidentally. That's okay. I think it's okay to do those kinds of battles, but this is a real battle we've got to fight. Now the developers have been dormant because of the economy, but we all know what's happening with the economy. The arrow's going up, and as the arrow goes up, the price goes up on that property every day. So if you've got a camera, take this picture, because I hope when you come back here in the future you can still take this picture, but it may not look like this. It's a very, very, very endangered battlefield. AP Hills Advance on Bolivar Heights in front of you. We saved part of it, we don't have all of it. Turn it over to Ed to tell you about AP Hill here.
All right,